Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
What's up, all of you amazing, abundant leaders out there? I am Wally Carmichael, your founder and host of the Men of Abundance podcast, the Pay It Forward community, proving to you that you can, in fact, live a life of abundance in family, faith, finances, and fitness on your way to having more. And I assure you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having more. In fact, it's your responsibility to have more if you have the ability to do so. And by listening to this show, you do have the ability to do so. The reason why I say it's your responsibility is because the more resources you have, the more you can give. And that's more wisdom, more of yourself, more time, and more financial resources. And listen, if you don't want to believe that for yourself, that's cool. All I'm telling you is this has been the reason why I'm living the lifestyle that I want to live, and the reason why many of the guests on this show, the conversations you're listening to, have been living such an amazing life as well. The life of their abundance, the life of their choice, and their life on purpose. Now, I will tell you one thing for sure. One of the reasons why I'm living such an amazing life is because I've had the ability, I've had the mindset to pay it forward every chance that I got. Whenever I have some information, I share it. Whenever I have additional resources, I share my resources. I share with my church. I'll just give money, give cash to somebody on the side of the road. I let them do with it whatever they will do with it. I give where I can give of my time, talents, and resources. So how can you pay for it right now this second? Well, one way is you can share Men of Abundance with others. Be abundant in your actions right now. Share Men of Abundance. Take a screenshot of your phone or even take a picture of your computer or however it is that you're listening to this and share it out on social media. Hashtag Men of Abundance. Hashtag abundance. And then tag me. Let me know that you're sharing it out there. I would love to give you a shout out and thank you personally on the show for sharing Men of Abundance with others. And those that you share it with, I assure you, they're going to come back and thank you for it. I've heard it time and time again. I get emails, I get text messages, I get Facebook messages, LinkedIn messages, you name it. People are contacting me on a regular basis, telling me what they get out of these conversations and how that one conversation that day made all the difference in their week, even in their life. It's extremely powerful when you share these conversations. So be abundant in your actions today. Pay it forward. Share Men of Abundance however you see fit. And please go over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. If you're getting anything out of this, it makes a big difference in the search engines when people are searching for the conversations that we're having here on Men of Abundance. So let's get into our conversation today. Our featured guest today is Todd Furneaux. He is co-founder of AdCaddy, which is a mobile app that keeps your personal inbox free of brand clutter by giving you a new email address and experience to use for all your consumer needs. AdCaddy will create a personalized inbox for you where you can direct email communications from your favorite companies. The app will sort your incoming emails, helping you keep promo emails, receipts, and shipping notifications separate and organized. And today we're having a conversation with the mastermind behind AdCaddy. Men of Abundance, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Todd Furneaux. Todd, welcome to Men of Abundance, brother. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm excellent. Where are you at in the world?
I am in San Francisco today, but I'm from Atlanta, Georgia.
I've been to both of those places. I like Atlanta. Now, I was in San Francisco. Goodness, I must have been maybe 7 or 8. So it was many years ago because my grandmother lived in Sacramento. We used to go visit her from Arizona, from Phoenix, where I grew up at. And then Atlanta, man, I dig Atlanta. I've been there a couple times.
Yeah, Atlanta's great. It's grown fast. I've been there for over 20 years, but a lot of people live there now. It's a great city.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think the last time I was there was definitely a good 10, maybe even 15 years ago. So it was the last time I was there. But anyhow, man,
Oh, wow.
I like to start out with an attitude of gratitude. What do you have to be grateful for today?
Today, I just had my fourth baby. So, I've got 4 kids under the age of 6. They're all happy and healthy. And, it's a miracle in itself. So,
Yeah, what a blessing, man. Those of us who have very healthy kids really do sometimes, I feel, take it for granted, because I've got some close friends that just don't. And, they love them just the same, but, man, what a challenge.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. So it's just good perspective to have, knowing that other kids need help, and very grateful.
For sure. Absolutely. And that's definitely something to be grateful for, man. So, one of the things we like to get into here, we're going to get into what you're doing professionally. And I talked a little bit about that before we got started here. But here on Men of Abundance, we really like to get to know the man behind the abundance. So if you would, how would you describe yourself?
Yeah, I would say disciplined and hardworking is kind of what I like to, the approach I like to take to life. And, I have a couple of businesses that I run and a few others that I mentor and help get started. I have 4 kids. I'm an ultra runner, so I like to kind of stay in shape and make sure I'm challenging myself, my mind and my body in that way. But, I'd say kind of slightly I want to grow every day. There's something that is in me that I want to learn and learn something new. I don't sit still very well. I don't like to watch TV. I don't like to watch sports. There's always just something that is a curiosity, in my head, whatever the flavor is from a business perspective or, something I'm researching that time. My mind just kind of flows down that path.
Man, I'll tell you what, that's interesting you say that. And I really never thought of it this way, but you know what? Business strategies and marketing strategies and life strategies, for that matter, is my sport. That's my spectator sport that I actually participate in. I'm like you, brother. I cannot sit and watch sports all year long. I can watch the Super Bowl with a group of guys, or the World Series and stuff like that. I love the Olympics. My wife and I love to watch the Olympics, but I just cannot make the time. I will not make the time when there's so many other things that I could be doing. That's just me personally, and that's, it's refreshing to meet somebody else who feels the same way.
Yeah, I think to some degree, people watch sports. Maybe it's a time to relax. There's nothing wrong with that. I do other things to relax. But, some people watch it because they think they're supposed to.
I
and
agree.
that's just like challenging a norm.
That's a good point.
Like, if you don't enjoy watching football, then don't watch football.
Yeah. Well, then you got the guys who say, man, we really killed him in that game. I'm like, you were sitting on the couch, dude. But I like messing with the guys all the time, especially now that fantasy football. I heard this radio commercial the other day with this girls. The DJ basically said something like, all right, girls, now's the time that your guys are out fantasizing about other guys playing football. Wait, that came out wrong. It's fantasy football. I call it Dungeons and Dragons for jocks. But it's pretty
I like
funny.
that. That's a great analogy, actually.
It's basically what it is, right? Kind of. Anyhow, man, we're getting down the rabbit hole as I often do. But brother, one of the other things that I really like to bring up here on Men of Abundance is that kick in the gut moment, because we all have them, especially somebody who's as busy as you are. Things happen. Not everything goes right. As much as we would like to, and as much as I plan ahead, speaking for myself, and I envision what I want to happen, it doesn't always turn out that way, and sometimes it just goes south. And it's what we do with that information and what we do with that experience that really sometimes changes the trajectory of our lives. So if you would, share with us a kick in the gut moment and really make us feel that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say from like an entrepreneurial perspective, this happens to me a lot, my 5th startup. And there's a thing that is common is product market fit. Is, do you have a product that people want to buy? And it's pretty simple mentality or way of thinking about it. But ultimately, you create something because it's in your head. And you're like, this is a really good idea. People are going to want this. And then you take it to the market, whether it be through a prototype, a survey, or just trying to get some information out there. And then people come back and say, no, I don't want that. You're like, whoa, okay. Because you may have spent a year on it, or, you just think this idea is brilliant, whatever it might be. And as you go through that process of finding out, does your product fit in the market? Do they really want it? Do they love it, when you get that kick in the gut moment of, nope, that's not what they want, that's kind of the point in time where you have to make a decision. Do I want to pivot and create, something slightly different from my idea, my original vision or hypothesis, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like you're, going from making corn to making, cars. It's just really just kind of pivoting within an idea. And most recently, AdCaddy is an ad tech company I started with some other folks. And, basically the idea was, people love brands. They love to keep up with brands. So how do we give them the ability to do that in their terms? Because the reason people say advertising is, annoying is because it's interruptive. It's interruptive to something that they're doing. But it's not interruptive if they go to a mall. Like, they're excited to see new items or, events that might be happening, new products or promotions and sales. So, we had this idea that we could make it fun and engaging if we gave the user control of when they see it and how often they see it. And so we went down the path of like 2 or 3 iterations. I was, selling my 401k to test this theory. And when it came back, they're like, no, we don't want that. I'm like, wow. I mean, that's a huge kick in the gut moment of like, okay, this is not how they want to see it. So then I went back and said, well, what if we solved a problem for them by eliminating the clutter in their personal inbox? Meaning, we'll give you a new consumer email address, and you can take that email address and give it to Amazon, and when you check out at Nike or, at, Banana Republic. So then all the marketing, shipping, receipts come into one location, we can organize it for you. Well, that then took off. And so which was a kick in the gut moment, I stuck with my guns to say, look, I think this vision or theory is correct. And then we moved it into something interesting that basically added utility to their life up front. But those kick in the gut moments, you can either let them kick you in the gut and then it just leaves a scar, or they're there for a reason and they happen for a reason. You say, well, what can I do to take that and really turn into something positive? And so, look, we are now in our 4th version of AdCaddy, and the 5th one will launch in 8 weeks. And we think we've kind of cracked the code on the psychology of how people can keep up with this and still declutter their personal inbox. So, those kick in the gut moments where, you feel like it's over, like this is done, how am I going to close the business down, turns into something really, really powerful or special. And in every business that I've started, every, major thing that's happened in my life, there's always been a kick in the gut moment. And then it's up to you to decide, what are you going to do with this kick in the gut? Are you going to learn from it, let it bring you down, or you're going to keep going with it?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. There's a lot of, there's a big message there, and there's quite a few messages there. One that I want to point out that, and really cater this to some of the guys out there, because I know others that are going through this, because I have these conversations. And you've got something in your mind, guys, and you're just going after it and going after it and going after it. But the difference is because I always say that there is a time to quit. There's a time to give up. But the difference is what Todd did was he made changes. They updated. You're on your 4th version now. It reminds me of 2 stories. One that's a huge success, and the other one not so much. I'll use a name for the huge success, and I won't use a name for the other one. Yuri Levine, I think it is, who started Waze back before smartphones even existed, and he started it in Israel. And he started on a PDA, and it was ugly as heck, and everybody said it's not going to work. He got no funding, and he just kept going at it. This is back in the 90s. And ultimately ended up selling that to Google for over $1 billion. $1 billion with a B. Now he's doing other things now as well. And then on the contrast to that, a guy that I know has been trying to get these the QR codes, and he's trying to do something specific with the QR codes, and he's saying China's doing it and blah blah blah. And he's been pushing this thing for years, and he's lost his 30-year marriage over it. He's lost his health over it, and he's still going after it. And it's just so you got to look at the contrast there, guys, and know that you have a great idea and keep checking with the market, but then keep changing with what the market is wanting. Is that accurate with your experience, Todd?
Oh my gosh, it's extremely accurate. And I think understanding when to quit is very, very powerful. And there's a couple things in my mind I think about. Here are a couple reasons of when to quit, and if they don't fit that, I need to keep going. And most of the time, it's keep going. But to your point on like the QR code, if you don't see continued growth and excitement around the idea, whether it was a product or idea or service, whatever it might be, then you need to reevaluate. Do I need to pivot and see something different, or am I out of pivots and this just isn't going to work? Like in the example of a QR code, like people just don't use them. I mean, I worked at Home Depot as a buyer, and every time we did research on QR codes, people just didn't use them. And so, ultimately, if something's going to turn into a dead end and it's not growing or it's going backwards, you have to make the hard call. You have to make the decision, because at some point the business has to go, right? You can't just keep pushing and wasting your money, other people's money, and letting it ride. At some point, it has to take off.
Yeah, and so and sometimes, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, and sometimes you got to consider the time too, because I forget who it was that was saying. I think it was Tony Robbins, and was partnered up with like a couple actors, and this was back in the early '90s. They were doing streaming of their content, their movies, and it just would not take off. And they put, millions of dollars into it. And then they quit. They gave up on it. And then like 5 years later, Netflix came out. So, and streaming video got more. But the thing is, at the time, the technology didn't support that, the streaming. It just wasn't there. But, you got to look at the time. Sometimes you're way ahead of your time. Sometimes you just miss the time,
Yeah. It's tough, depending on the nature of the idea too. Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, most businesses take 7 years to go somewhere, but between 0 and 7, they're growing. They have positive momentum. There's things that you can see that are fundamentally good and progressing in the right direction. So, it may have taken you 10 years to hear of Yeti before they were super popular, now a public company. But, between 0 and 4 years, when nobody knew of them, they're still growing. They're still progressing. And so that's the key, is looking at is this adding utility to someone's life? Is it changing their life to making it better? Is it something that they're excited about? Is it evoking an emotion, adding a utility to their life? And then do they want it? Are they willing to pay for it? And so as you answer all these questions, you can start to see, like, where do I need to change and pivot? But, a good example too is, when you look at Instagram adding stories, I always like to use this as an example. So Instagram, very successful story. People loved Instagram. It was amazing. The original guys sold it for $1 billion, and then now it's valued at like somewhere in the $150 billion range. So obviously a very high success story. But if you ask yourself, how exciting would Instagram be without stories? You'd say, well, I don't know. I mean, like right now, my feed on Instagram is 80% stories. So it kind of tells you, like, people don't want to post these concrete pictures that last forever. They want to post something that's a little bit more fluid, that can go away. Well, that's a huge pivot for them. That's something they adapted, they learned from. They didn't quit, right? But they also added it on. So there's this huge balance of, how do I keep progressing and adapting my business for what the market wants? At the same time, when do you know when to kill a feature, right? And the business that's going well. Like when you're Best Buy, when do you stop selling CDs? And make that real estate available for something else. So it's very difficult to make those decisions, but it's a constant balance of killing a feature, killing an idea within your business to make sure you can get ready for the next piece, or when do you just hang it up, like in the case of a QR code.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Instagram's another great story, because if you look at the background of Instagram, it did not start out the way it ended up. It was more of like a blog, and they just found that people were sharing pictures more than they were, and images and stuff more than they were using the rest of the platform. So they transitioned. And then when they went to stories was about the time Snapchat came out, and they were like, oh, that's popular. Let's add that. And then where'd Snapchat go?
What if they didn't do that?
And they were already a bigger platform than Snapchat. So Snapchat was coming up, and then the stories disappeared and stuff like that. So yeah, the evolution, I can just talk about this this is what I was talking about. This is where I geek out at. I can sit and just study this stuff and have these conversations forever, man. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so many. It's just the evolution. Even my wife and I were talking the other day about Chick-fil-A of all things, and just had a conversation. We're like, when did Chick-fil-A start? And I remember back in the 80s, it was in the malls. And I was like, well, it must have started around that time, around the 80s. But to your point about, products being out forever and then finally making mainstream, we looked it up and found out that Chick-fil-A was started in 1946. Like 40 years before, almost 40 years before I thought it was originally started. And which is cool, which is also...
There's definitely... Yep. There's the grinding phase that everyone goes through, and I think the balance of when do you know you should keep grinding and when you should quit is very subjective. But when you put your family at harm, or when you're doing something that just the market isn't accepting, you have to make the hard decision.
Yeah, brother, that's the big point right there, and thanks for saying that, because when you're putting yourself and your family at harm for the sake of your dreams, man, look, that hits home for me. Because I was that guy for quite some time in another industry, spent $60,000 in credit card debt and literally losing hair over the stress. I mean, just, not worth it, man. So I can definitely relate with that. Definitely relate with that. So, let's talk a little bit more about this app, because I get why you pulled it up, why the need for it. I actually downloaded it on my phone and was checking it out myself, because what I do is I've got several different emails, and I still use a Yahoo account for that junk. I call it my junk mail. Literally, I don't subscribe to anything. And there are some things that I do want to subscribe to that, quite frankly, I do use another account that is kind of my main account. And I'm constantly getting bombarded with, I mean, you name it. There's certain services that I use, for instance, like LinkedIn. I get so many followers on LinkedIn and so much content and so much information. I get LinkedIn. I just got to go through and select all LinkedIn and delete them all. It's a nuisance, but I still want to have access to that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of the idea. Where I usually ask men first, get 100 emails a day from brands. They love seeing the emails because they're savvy shoppers. They want to get the coupon, understand what new items are coming out, et cetera, et cetera. So that's to men, and for us, an easy sell. For men, I always ask, okay, tell me your top 5 or 10 hobbies and brands that you want to keep up with, right? So maybe you're a fisherman, you want to see the Bass Pro email. They have all the new deals and products that are coming out, exciting things. Well, I'm a runner, so I want to see Nike and Solomon and all the different event series and races that are going on. Maybe it's concert series. Maybe it's a newsletter from, your favorite athlete. Well, all these things are, curated in a sense of, they spend a lot of time creating that content. So it could be a promotion, could be a new item, could be a newsletter, an event like a concert, any of these items. But when they're active, they're annoying. And that's the problem, because you're going through Starbucks at 6 a.m. and you're looking at your email really quick. You're certainly not in the mood to shop. You're not in the mood to keep up with brands and events at that point in time. Mm-hmm. But when it's lunchtime, you got a half an hour to look at stuff, or you're relaxed on the couch at night and you want to see what's going on there. Think of it like a personally curated magazine. Well, now you jump in AdCaddy on your terms, and you flow through these marketing emails essentially, or these communications from your brands in a way that's fun. It'd be like a personally curated magazine where every page is a brand that you're excited to see what's going on. And it's kind of like you're in a mall. You're there with intent. You're there to look at these things. And so I found myself now, my personal inbox is so clean. It's amazing. So I love that piece of it. So it clears up a cluttered inbox, makes it really easy to manage. But then I get excited to see the new Bonobos email with the new shirts they came out with. It's actually exciting. I've never in my life been excited to see those emails. Now I'm excited because I love Nike, for example. I want to see what new running shoes Nike's coming out with. Well, that's fun and exciting to see when it's on my terms. And so that's what we do. We give you a new email address. You can then use that to sign up and subscribe to all the brands. Use it when you're checking out. So all the shipping and receipts are nicely organized. And everything is organized by brand in the platform. And then we separate shipping, receipts, and marketing. And we have all types of controls. And the things that we're going to start to put into this app in 8 weeks with the newest build is you can say, all right, Nike, I just bought a pair of shoes. I don't want to have an email for 60 days. So you can kind of shut it down when you you need a break from that brand, if you will, so you don't get exhausted or fatigued from seeing too many emails from them. You got to understand, capitalism can't exist without marketing. They're going to find a way to get to you, whether that means sending something in your mailbox, texting you because you're forced to give your phone number, some way they have to get the message across. So if I could put the user in control, now both sides are happy. So they're not going to annoy you, and you can control how you want. And then Nike now knows, okay, well, this guy only wants to hear from me every 20 days. Well, let's send him something that's relevant to him. Because from their perspective, they're saying, well, I'm just going to send these my list something 5 times a week because I don't know what they want, when they want it, how they want it. So they're just doing this shotgun approach. So we want to be what we're calling a brand relationship manager. So we connect the brand and the consumer. We allow you as the consumer to manage your brands. Then it becomes fun and exciting.
Wow, that's really cool, man. I like it because it's definitely needed. Like I said, there's stuff like Bahama Breeze down the street. I want to know when they have, a 40% off, happy hour or something like that.
Yeah.
I want to know that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
I don't want to miss out on that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
that's really
having
cool.
Control and being in control of when you see it, it's a lot of fun.
And, so do you have what's the difference in AdCaddy than just having a regular separate email account?
Yeah, great question. One, the controls that we give you, so you can kind of determine exactly how often a brand can send you emails. If you want to snooze a brand, you can. It's very user controlled, and it's controlled in the sense of you only jump in when you want to jump in. If you create a new email address and then you plug in your iPhone, everything just gets married together, and it's just another email at that point.
Correct.
But the main thing that we do is how we organize and parse the emails. So when you jump into AdCaddy, you see a list of brand tiles, and it'll tell you if that brand has an unread email. It'll tell you if that unread email is marketing, or if it's maybe a shipping notification, or if it's a receipt. So we show you that very quickly on the front page. And then when you click on a brand, we parse out through some machine learning, basically, your marketing emails, receipts, and shipping. So you can very quickly access that. So let's say you're walking into a store and you want to see what's going on. You can just click on that brand tile, and then you can see from the brand landing page all the things that are going on from that brand. So it's really how it's organized within our custom app, and then the controls that you have as a user that drastically differentiate it from a traditional email.
Wow, that's really cool. So is building apps, is that something that you normally do, or did you have somebody else build this out for you? How'd that work out?
So I have a co-founder that's been in the tech development space for 25 years, and he's really taken that piece of it on. But I've done some design work on the app side, UX UI, from the standpoint of take an idea and how this is going to flow through. So between the team that we have working on this in operations and design, myself, and then we have a technology side of full-time developers that do the tech expertise. So I'm not a coder per se, but I have had some experience on creating technology since.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. My oldest boy was, real techie. He's real techie, and I had him building an app for when I was on active duty when apps were really just kind of getting more and more popular. He built a pretty cool app for my organization. I was pretty proud of him for that.
Oh, nice.
It was neat too. A lot of people used
Yeah.
it. They still use it too. And I didn't charge for it or anything. We just threw it out there for them, password protected and stuff. Because it was pretty neat. So I dig that kind of stuff. And I'm working with some other guys that are doing apps because there's a couple businesses that I work with that absolutely need apps for their business, for making appointments and all kinds of stuff. That's just apps are really good for many business models. And I just think that's another.
They get complicated, but it's it's a crowded space in apps, and so the key thing within that is have a niche and then add a utility to somebody's life. Otherwise, the retention is very, very difficult.
Oh, absolutely. Convenience and delivery are the two top things when it comes to any type of product or service these days. And an app can do that. And when I want to order a pizza, I get on the app and I almost order the same thing pretty much every time. I just click reorder and boom, I can even track it. It's in the oven. I mean, every little thing. When I go get a haircut, I get on my app and I schedule my haircut. Same person. They already know exactly what I want, the whole bit. It's just so much more convenient. And so many business models can use it. So good on you, man. That's awesome. And that's a good news story. And I think you're definitely paying it forward, because what it's doing for me is really decluttering my email so I don't miss the important emails, for instance, from clients or, any number of things that I absolutely need to get, because all of the ads, like you said, I've got 4 or 5 emails that all feed into one feed when I open up my phone, and I've got 2,000 unread emails, so, and 90% of them are brands, are advertising.
Yeah.
That I do want. I want to receive them. I just don't want all of them in the feed. So absolutely brilliant, man. I dig it. So, cool. Brother, we're at the excellent, man. So we're at the point where we're going to pay it forward. You ready to do that?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So share with Men of Abundance 1 to 3 actionable steps that they can take today. And one of the things I kind of want to lead forward on, I don't normally do, but you mentioned about how detailed and how organized you are with your busy life. I'd like to hear a little bit about some action steps towards that, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. On the busy life side, I'll caveat this with, a lot of guys will say, "Oh, wake up at 4:30. You can sleep when you're dead." Those are just I think, a little bit ignorant statements, because at some point it's been dramatically proven how important sleep is, not only to your cognitive abilities during the day. And, I think I heard a stat the other day is if you sleep on average less than, I think, 6 hours, there's 100% chance of like Alzheimer's and dementia at an early age. So, sleep is just vitally important. So I get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night. I just force myself to get that amount of sleep. But I'm typically up between 5 and 6 a.m. And like everything is very scheduled from the standpoint of my first meetings, usually around 6:30 or 7:30. And then where I go and what I do to make sure that my work done across multiple businesses, and then jump into family time at 4:30, because I have extremely young kids. That's the time before they need to go to bed. And then once they're in bed, I can spend some time with my wife, and then I can get back to work. So it allows me to kind of be, intentional around those things. And if I want to exercise, I got to force it in at lunch, or I got to force it in, excuse me, at an early morning time frame. So I think having the priority of what's important for the week. So if I know I'm going to work out 3 times, I'm going to schedule it, or 5 times, I'm going to schedule it. If I want to have, extra time with my kids in the morning, I'll schedule it. And so I think just being intentional about those things is probably the most important thing that I do. And it all comes down to a calendar. If it doesn't get on the calendar, it doesn't get done. It's kind of like setting a goal, but in a much more realistic sense. To say, I'm going to schedule, taking my kids to school this day, as opposed to a meeting at 6:30 in the morning. So just putting all that on the calendar and being intentional early in the week, it really, what gets scheduled gets done. And so it's just a great way to organize your life around it, make sure it happens, make sure it's logical and the logistics work out. And then it ends up happening. So it's been a great trick for me of planning the week out, putting it on the calendar, and then executing.
Excellent, man. Yeah. If your to-do list is not on your calendar, guys, it's not going to get done. That's my experience anyhow. It's just going to sit it's just going to sit on your desk. So you already mentioned a couple rituals, but what other rituals make a big impact in your life?
I'd say one for me is running. It's my time, it's my time of meditation. It's my time of thinking. It's my time of creating new ideas. Like any creative thought that I have almost always happens on a run, because I'm forced into this headspace of, really no other distractions. I know for that 1 hour or whatever it's, plus or minus 20 minutes, that I'm going to be focused on a task, and my mind can just start to wonder and think about new ideas. So for me, whatever that is, for yourself, it could be woodworking, it could be sanding something, like making something. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's hard to tell somebody to go sit in a quiet room for 20 minutes. Like it's just hard to force that in. But if you do it in the sense of an exercise routine or, building something that's a little bit more mundane, it could be cutting the grass, right? So maybe today you pay somebody to cut your grass, but it takes an hour. Well, cut it yourself. And then, not only save money, but during that time, it gives your brain time to disconnect and really think, which we are not very good as Americans. But having those activities that you kind of enjoy, could maybe save you money or keep you healthy, whatever it might be, allows your mind to then get into a flow state of, thinking through and being creative.
I really like that because I've had to train myself to sit in a quiet room here in my office or even down by the lake and just sit with no headphones on, no nothing, and just think and just kind of clear my mind. Mm-hmm. It takes training to do that, believe it or not, because one of the things that I do with many of my clients is I have them, one of the first things I have them do is just write a question at the top of a book or a piece of paper and just sit for an hour and just answer that question in your mind and write it down. And they struggle with it because they're so darn busy. They're used to being active and moving, but that is a great technique to do basically the same thing, but be busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, exactly. It kind of it's a little bit of a dual task, but you don't need to think much while you're running, or you're cutting the grass. Right. You go, and then it forces you into that flow state. So.
Yeah, wonderful. Don't try this powerful. Using the lathe in the woodworking department or anything, but be safe out there, guys. But something that you don't have to think, really concentrate too much on. Don't do it while you're driving. So what are you reading or listening to that you would recommend to our abundant leaders, and why?
Yeah, I like the podcast, from an entrepreneurial perspective, How I Built This by Guy Raz. Mm-hmm. It's a big one for me that, I think every story has something to learn in that. So that's been a good one that I listen to a lot. And then right now what I'm reading is a lot of things around advertising for AdCaddy. And, like there's a book called Frenemies that's really good if you're in advertising. And then I get into a lot of things around medical, and I'm in a business that's in athletic med tech. And so, that's what I like to do is like whatever I'm in that moment, like what if I was trained to be a doctor? Well, I go down that path of like being able to have a conversation with somebody that is a doctor, or on the flip side, or somebody that's been in advertising for 30 years, have some original thought. So I dive deep into these categories from a listening and learning perspective. So I kind of zoom out, get some general learnings from people that I love and respect and want to hear from, and then I dive into very, very specific topics. I'm going to try and become an expert on those.
Very cool. Yeah, I love it. That's the best way to become, I think the second best way to become an expert in a category is to have conversations with people who are doing it. The next best thing is to teach it or to have conversations about it, because you only know something to the point that you can explain it to somebody else.
So I heard a really interesting point on exactly what you just said from a behavioral economist that I sat down with. And he was a CEO of a big company for a while. And he said, look, if I have somebody that needs to learn a lesson on something, and, typically you would say, well, I'm going to get you a mentor and help you learn that lesson. He's like, that's really not that effective. He goes, but if I take that same person that needs the learning and I say, hey, I want you to mentor somebody else, he goes, they get it all in spades. And the reason being is from like when you're forced to think through your message of how you're going to teach and train somebody else, you're forced to like really solidify that idea in your and think through it more clearly, because you then have to talk to somebody else about it. And that was a really, really interesting way of thinking about it, right? So you have an employee that needs to learn a lesson on, like how you should talk to, superiors in a meeting. All right, well, as opposed to getting him mentored, have him mentor somebody else. And that's just a really powerful way of kind of turning the psychology around on it, and they end up really changing when they're trying to tell somebody else how they should do it.
Yeah. The healthiest time in my life was when I was a health and fitness instructor in group fitness.
Yeah.
Because I was doing it all the time and teaching it all the time. Therefore, I was, practicing it myself. So what do you feel holds most people back from living a life of true abundance, Todd?
Another thing around pay it forward is I do this this deal where I go and talk to college students, and I teach an entrepreneurial class at the University of Georgia, and it's a ton of fun. I get to do it once or twice a year, and I do a few classes. And at the end of it, knowing that these 20-year-olds or 19-year-olds aren't going to remember everything that we talked about in that class, there's usually one takeaway, and I say, sign up for something that scares you. So one thing I say, you may not remember anything else that I said today, but if anything I said today supports one action on your side, it would be sign up for something that scares you. Because when you do that one thing, it essentially starts to build the muscle of discipline to get that one thing done. It teaches you hey, even though you're scared, it's only a point in time, and then you won't be scared doing it the second time. It teaches you so much, and I've learned these lessons by, starting a business that scared me, signing up for an ultra marathon that scared me, whatever these pieces are, and then as you kind of conquer that first task, how big it is, right? It could be a 5K to start off, but it scared you. You didn't think you were a runner. You didn't think you could do it, or you didn't think you could speak in front of 200 people, and you signed up for something to force yourself to do it. Whatever it is that scared you, you sign up, you do it. And then you've basically proven to yourself that you can do it. And then there's so many lessons that you'll learn inherently by doing it, like what it takes to be disciplined, to stay, engaged in that, what it takes to, learn enough so you can do a good job in it. All the pieces that go along with the exploration of completing that task that essentially effectively scared you, build something in you that says, well, okay, if I could do that, what's the next thing that I can do? And then you just keep growing these pieces of abundance, essentially, to use your term. And, you're proving to yourself, the only person that holds you back is you. But at the same time, there's a trick in that to say, well, you also have to have the capability, right? You have to build the capabilities in order to get better and better to do that. Like, if you're running a $200 million business and all of a sudden you want to run a $200 billion business, it's a different skill set. You go from 10 employees to 1,000 employees. So you can get there, and it might scare you, but you have to build towards those learnings. And so that's what I say is just, what holds people back is doing things that scare them. And in order to do that, you just have to start somewhere. Like how big or small it is, start somewhere, do something that scares you, and then sign up every year for something that really scares you, that you really have to kind of, learn and figure out and get towards. So that's it.
That's a powerful message, man. Yeah, definitely. The cure for fear is action, and you're taking action in each one of those events. Absolutely love it, man. So what does being a man of abundance mean to you, Todd? I tie everything back to, am I abundant in life across the board? Am I helping other people in my situation? Am I helping other guys starting businesses on the lessons that I've learned? Am I loving my family? Am I loving my kids? Am I being the things that people expect from me as a dad or a husband or, an employee or an employer or whatever it might be? So I think for me, I segment it by area, and, I kind of set out clear expectations I have of myself and desires I have of myself. And am I being abundant within each of those? So when my wife say I'm the best husband, when my kids say I'm the best dad, and in the areas that really matter to me, am I growing in abundance in those? And that's it. I mean, it changes for everybody, right? I mean, you may not have kids, so you don't care to be the best dad, and so it's really subjective to you. But if you don't think about those things, you'll let life dictate. Having the most likes on Instagram, what does that do for you? Mm-hmm. So little things like that, where you're intentional about, here's the things that I want to be really good at and the things that matter to me. And what's really fun is you set those out, and 5 years later you go back and look at them. You're like, oh wow, I achieved all of those things. What next, right? But then that gets back to my earlier point of, okay, well, now you've grown in abundance, you've grown in these disciplines. Now you can achieve bigger things, and it may not be about you. It may be what the world needs from you at that point, and it could shift. But that's fun too. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. Thanks for sharing that. So, brother, we are going to close this up, and we are most certainly going to have your website and your link, adcaddy.com, linked up in the show notes so people can go check that out. What else would you like for our abundant leaders to get out of our conversation today before I let you go?
No, I think, from this standpoint, I love this podcast. podcast, I would say, again, back to that challenge I give everybody is, and I give myself every year, is sign up for something that scares you. And I think that would be something that you could have an actionable takeaway from this. And then as you're doing that, you may think back to something you've heard on this podcast or our conversation today. But it all starts with that one action, that one step, and do something that kind of scares you, something that you want to grow in and get better at, and make it happen.
Absolutely, man. Powerful message. I totally agree with that. Guys, make sure you take action on that, because that is the cure for fear, is taking action. And I always say get uncomfortable. And there's an action step to get. Everybody's like, well, how do I do that? And there's one right there. Sign up for your, what do they call it? Go to Million Cups and sign up to pitch your business model, or, go to, what is the other one that they do? Goodness, I can't think of it. I go to that one as well, but just sign up for something, get out in front of people, talk to people, say hi to somebody, ask for something. There's so many different things you can do, but yeah, definitely sign up for something that scares you.
Formalize it. Absolutely.
Excellent. So, brother, excellent conversation, man. I dig what you have going on. I greatly appreciate your time and your comments. Go out, live your life of abundance, man, and just keep paying it forward. I'm digging it.
Awesome. Thank you. Great talk.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.